Hello DevOps friends, welcome to Full Stack Live. I'm Jochen, the Monospace Mentor. Hello everyone. Hi Chugging Coffee, what an inspirational nickname. How you doing? Good to see all of you and good to be back. My schedule has been a little bit disrupted lately, mostly because of work appointments. At the moment we are working with a professional marketing agency to bang the drum a little bit for our managed hosting business. And most of the calls that we are having with these agencies are either on Tuesdays or Thursdays, which is exactly the days where I've scheduled my live streams and reserved time for that. So sometimes my schedule gets a little bit disrupted, and I'm sorry for that because I won't get to talk to you and won't get to enjoy all your contributions. So speaking of contributions, this is the Monospace Mentor Office Hour. I'm Jochen, the Monospace Mentor, and I'm here to answer your questions. So if there's anything that you'd like to ask about Linux system administration, which I've been doing since 1993, or about programming, which I've been doing since 1984, or about having a career, which I really intend to get now, then post your questions to the Q&A platform, and the URL for that platform is qa.monospacementor.com. Let's get it on screen too. You can join there without having to sign up or anything. You can simply go there and post your questions. We'll collect a few of your questions and then I'm going to go and try and answer them as best I can. Of course, I can't answer everything, but I'll definitely do my best to help you out in some way. And if it's only by pointing you to somewhere or someone who can answer your question much better than I can. Anyway, this is about you. I haven't prepared anything, so please help me out and post a few questions on qa.monospacementor.com. Speaking of events, that reminds me that yesterday I added an events page to the Monospace Mentor website. So if you go to monospacementor.com without the QA in front, then you'll be on my main teaching website. And there's now an events link up at the top with all the other links, and you'll see the events that I've planned, and that does both include the live streams as well as my courses. I've scheduled another Varnish Mastery course for April, and it's double the amount of time that I've originally planned. So instead of 3 hours, you'll get 3 hours twice at the same price, because the amount of material we have to get through is simply far too vast to make it in 3 hours, as I've realized doing this course for the first time a few days ago. And so I've extended the time. It's going to be 2 days with 3 hours each, max. Might be 2.5 hours, depending on how quickly we'll get on. And if you're interested in website performance or in the Varnish cache proxy, specifically the Varnish Mastery course is maybe for you. But other than that, I've also set up recurring entries in the events tab for my live streams. So if I have to cancel one, I'll do it there. That will give me a central space where I can communicate when I'll be able to be on your screens or not. And so if you are ever in doubt if there's going to be a live stream, simply go to monospacementor.com and click on events and you'll see. But housekeeping aside, again, if you have any questions, please post them to qa.monospacementor.com. It's the interactive platform that I'm using for all my courses, and so this is quite convenient. It doesn't require you to leave an email address or even enter a name. You can simply go and post your questions anonymously. You can still tell me in chat which question was yours, but it's definitely not necessary. So again, How is everyone? Post in chat how you are, what you're doing, what you're up to on this nice Friday. For me, afternoon. It might be morning for you still, or you might be even further ahead and already getting ready for the weekend. And I envy you. So let me know what you're doing, if you're lurking in the background doing your own work, or if there's anything that you have and that you'd like to share or ask. If it's a question, post it to qa.monospacementor.com. And if you'd simply like to share something that you're excited about or that was great this week, post it to chat and share it with us there. Other than that, I'll simply go in standby mode, waiting for questions to come in, because as I said, I haven't prepared anything that I'm going to do today. It's not a live coding stream, even though I might actually run a live coding stream right after the office hour. There are a few things that I'd like to tackle, and if there's still a bit of motivation left by the end of the office hour, then I might actually continue doing some live coding, but there's also a 50-50 chance that I simply wrap things up and go into the weekend. My family is already in weekend mode. They've left to have a nice day outside, so I have a quiet house for myself, and I might simply use that to get some reading done, or maybe work on my newsletter that's already due again. I've started an attempt at doing a weekly newsletter for which you can also subscribe on monospacementor.com. It's about DevOps, of course. It's usually with a section that I write about a specific topic that's close to my heart, and then there will be a few interesting things from the blog if there was something new, which this week there wasn't, and a few links that I happened to find and that I enjoyed that I'd like to recommend you as your weekend. Or no, it's your weekly reading, because the newsletter is going to go out on Monday morning. All right, folks, so I'll wait for questions to come in, and I'll do some stuff behind the scenes in the meantime. And if there's anything that you'd like to ask, post it to qa.monospacementor.com. So the main reason why I'm using this Q&A platform is that it enables me to highlight the question that I'm talking about at the moment. So if someone is unsure or has just joined the channel or something like that, they'll get some context and actually know what I'm rambling on about. Makes things a little bit more pleasant for everyone involved. Okay. Oh, and by the way, welcome to the Stack Sphere. Thanks for following. I didn't mention that because you followed during the standby scene, but I do appreciate your following. No questions? Doesn't anyone have any? That might be a good thing. And again, this is the Monospace Mentor office hour. If you have any questions, go to qa.monospacementor.com, post your questions there, and I'll address them as best I can. And if you don't, I'll keep drinking coffee. When the coffee's gone, I'll shut down the screen, and your opportunity to ask anything is over. That's how it is. Should you have issues with accessing the Q&A platform or entering your questions, let me know. Okay, there is a question, so let's go ahead and take a look at it. Text is actually a little bit small. Why is it that small? It's smaller than the original. That's a strange styling effect. Anyway, question is, current Ruby/Rails dev with 4 years in the industry, all Rails work for the most part. Good for you. Love programming, but looking at options outside of web application product development. Found a new interest in DevOps, but it's obviously a huge area. Do you have a couple top-level concepts or tooling areas that would be greatly helpful to learn as I go down that path? Or any resource recommendations you have for learning more? I know this is vague and tough to answer quickly with limited details, but it's Q&A time. Perfect question. I love it. I really love it. It's also definitely a situation where many people find themselves in. I'll just need a second to get a mostly coherent answer together. But so my main thought is, since you are already experienced in development, I think it's a good idea to extend that horizon in a DevOps way. Now, what do I mean particular with DevOps? DevOps means tooling that is basically a little bit meta to the whole development process. Tooling that makes your development process easier, that streamlines your development process, or that makes deploying changes easier, that makes reviewing changes before they go online easier, something like that. All the many opportunities to automate stuff are a great way to get more in the DevOps or even in the direction of SRE, where you apply your development skills not to the business application itself, but to its management, to its development, to its review, to its deployment, to its maintenance in production. So that's where I would go next, because that is directly adjacent to what you're already doing. It's not something completely different where you've been doing Rails development at the moment, and now I'm going and telling you to learn Terraform to set up servers. That would be a disconnect between these two topics. I don't say it's not valuable skills and knowledge, but it's not really connected to what you're doing at the moment. And that these kinds of disconnects are generally a huge reason to drop things again, because why would you do that? The purpose is not clear. However, if, for example, your next step would be to try out Kamal, for example, to see how you can deploy a Rails application using Kamal and Docker images under the hood, is definitely adjacent to what you're already doing, and it gets you onto that meta level where you're not developing an application, but you're developing tooling that deals with your application, if you know what I mean. So exploring Kamal, for example, would be a great and interesting project. For that, you would have to create a Docker image of your application, because Kamal uses Docker to deploy your application. And so if you are not familiar with Docker yet, this would be a great opportunity to familiarize with it. That way, you're learning new skills, namely Docker in that context, and then you'll be able to use the images that you're able to cut now to deploy them using Kamal to a VPS of some kind or something. And now you've built something that allows you to quickly deploy changes to your application. That would be one example where I would go. So generally, look for things that might even bug you in your daily work, where you are happy with your development environment, you have your favorite editor, you have your favorite operating system, development works nicely, but as soon as you need to get your new feature branch into production, the pain starts, just hypothetically. If you realize, we don't have any peer review, or maybe no one takes a look if tests are actually successful or not, and I hope you have tests. These are things where you can tackle pain points and resolve them by learning new stuff. For example, if no one takes a look at tests anymore, maybe getting into CI is something that would help you. If you're not having a CI pipeline yet on GitHub Actions or GitLab CI or something like that, try out that and see how a GitLab CI run, for example, returns errors and automatically runs linting on your code changes, runs tests on your code changes, things like that. If that's already taken care of, how about deployment? Can you deploy right out of your CI system? Maybe you need to teach your CI system to create those images that Kamal then is able to deploy. Maybe that would be a next step, to actually integrate Kamal with your CI system and have it create the latest Docker image and then use Kamal to bring it onto your test system or even your production system. Things like that are for me the most natural next steps that get you from your development bubble more to the intersection where operations and development intersect, and that's basically the DevOps space. Does that make sense? And I've made a lot of assumptions there because I didn't have any further context. So if you'd like to extend what you've said with your current situation, or maybe you have a few pain points that come to mind, feel free to post them as well. That definitely was a great first questions to launch us into our session here. So yeah, I guess my summary would be look for something that comes natural, that has some significance to your actual work, instead of just trying to find a pet project that might drain your intrinsic motivation quite quickly, and then you won't benefit from doing it anymore. Sorry. That came more quickly than I was able to push the mute button. Balthasar, welcome, welcome, welcome. If you have any questions, post them to qa.monospacementor.com. Enhan Codes, hello. Welcome to the Monospace Mentor office hour, where I am here to answer your questions. If you have any, go to qa.monospacementor.com. You can go there without having to enter an email address or even a name or something. Just post your question. I'll get it on screen and try and answer it as best I can. And Coast asked, how are you? I'm great. I'm great. The weekend is already near, and yeah, I'm quite happy with how the week went. And I hope it's going to be a very relaxing weekend. How's life for you and Goats? Thinking about it, Nahan is probably closer to how that should be pronounced, I guess. I really need to familiarize myself with common Asian names. Trying to install Ubuntu 2 times and failed due to partition error. So did you choose the wrong partition sizes, or is it more of a hardware problem? Beth writes, no questions right now, but a quick comment. You remember how I was like, Docker Swarm is not that bad actually. It might be worth continuing to use in the lab. Threw it away. Ouch, 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 ouch. That does not look good. But yeah, I was surprised that you were actually considering Swarm, because yeah, my impression was that Swarm was legacy technology stuff that even Docker doesn't touch anymore. So there's a follow-up to our previous question. Let me see if actually it's my Zoom that screws with. No, for some reason it just doesn't quite work with the... I think the folks over at Vvox did change something, and now it's not working anymore. Anyway, so our viewer writes, that all makes perfect sense on the DevOps stuff. Thank you. You're welcome. I like your perspective on trying at least to stay closer to the current active app work than just starting with all new concepts. Still haven't used Kamal yet, but I've used Terraform for a fraction of a second on a previous team. Thanks for the reply. Lots of reading matching the keyboard to do in the coming months in this area. Yeah, I mean, if you are interested in one particular technology, it's of course fine if you pick it up, but hey, when I look at myself, what are the things that I did pick up and followed through on them? Those were mostly things that were kind of relevant to what I was doing, kind of relevant to the work that I and my team have been doing. Of course, there's always stuff that I explore simply out of sheer curiosity, but that usually doesn't take long and last long, and so that's why I actually suggested picking something that was more close to the stuff that you were doing already anyway, and finding a way how things could augment what you're doing at the moment. So yeah, find something where maybe you and your team have some kind of a pain point and try to address that. You are welcome to drop by anytime on stream with that particular issue and ask about recommendations, about possible solutions, and we'll be able to discuss that. I'll be happy to share my thoughts on anything like that. Yeah, but I think doing something that is relevant to your current work will simply help you keep up that intrinsic motivation, and you can stick with it for a longer time than if it's just a kind of construed pet project. In chat, and Nahan Code says, maybe I need to update the motherboard firmware. That's not likely, I think. In all the years that I've installed stuff on machines, I never had to actually upgrade motherboard firmware to get things running. And something like Ubuntu really runs on anything that is kind of supported. If you don't have a motherboard firmware or a BIOS that's completely broken, and I couldn't think of a reason why it would be, I don't think a firmware upgrade would change anything. Bethesda says it still works great, but I was hoping, based on things I was reading, that it would do local volume migration on stack migration, and well, that's not the case. You mean that if you have physical storage on one machine and you migrate a container to a different machine, it would take the storage with it? That's actually pretty advanced stuff, and I wouldn't even have guessed that it's built into Swarm. Because does Kubernetes even do that? I mean, you do physical volumes, but you have to put them on a shared storage anyway to make them available elsewhere. So, yeah. So, apart from yeah, I don't think the BIOS or something would be the culprit in installation issues. I think it's more likely that it's either a hardware error with your disks, that you might be using very old disks that are starting to fail in some way. Other than that, I guess we would have to have a little bit more detail about the issues. If you read things that made you think that was the case, that's disappointing, yeah. Because, yeah, I would have been amazed reading that Swarm supports something like that, and yeah, that would make it pretty capable and useful in many situations when you just can simply migrate a container from one location to the other and the storage automatically migrates with it. And then finding out that it actually doesn't work. That's sad. Sorry for you. Nahancode says it teases an SSD that she hasn't used in a while. Yeah, maybe it's the SSD then. Because, yeah, with Ubuntu, you've picked one of the most frequently installed Linux distributions, and that alone makes it very unlikely that it's an issue with hardware support or something, or that your main board might be too old or something. I mean that there's use in upgrading your BIOS and things like that, because especially support for newer hardware will be better. But I wouldn't expect support of a humble SSD would be an issue with that. Oh, I'm starting to get a headache. What's wrong? Maybe there's not going to be a live coding stream afterwards after all. Maybe it's just a lack of coffee. Again, if you have any questions, qa.monospacementor.com is the place where you can leave them, where I can pick them up, get them on screen, and try and answer them. If you have any questions about Linux system administration, about Ruby coding, about software engineering in general, maybe you have an IT career question, that's all stuff that's perfectly suited for the office hour here. Balthasar's going all in on Kubernetes. Separating the control plane from the worker nodes. That's always a good idea. I mean, that's the recommended way to run a production cluster anyway, to have dedicated control plane nodes and then your own dedicated worker nodes. Why wouldn't it be beneficial for a smaller K3s installation as well? So far, no new questions. Keep them coming. qa.monospacementor.com. Balthasar says, yeah, I knew that, but I was trying to keep things simpler. Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. Especially if you're doing just an experimental installation with things like K3s or Kind or something. Yeah, why would you separate the control plane nodes from the worker nodes, since the control plane won't have anything significant to do anyway, usually. But on the other hand, having things separate sometimes makes upgrades much easier. For example, if you can actually migrate workloads from one worker node to the other while one worker node gets upgraded is one thing, and especially with the control plane, that's the same thing, but a little bit more sensitive. So having separate control plane nodes that you can upgrade one by one sometimes makes the process a little bit more reliable as well. Yes, that's exactly what I meant. When you need to patch a host, taint the worker node, it'll be drained of workloads. Then you can migrate the control plane and call it a day. Yep, makes perfect sense. I think that's a very good approach. Submit your questions and I'll answer them. This is the Monospace Mentor Office Hour. This is your opportunity to ask questions. And here's a question. How about that Varnish course? Yeah, so the Varnish course happened. It was great. I had a lot of fun. I realized that it was far too short for the amount of material I had packed into it. So there's going to be a round 2 for the current Varnish course, with the current participants. And yesterday I've actually scheduled another Varnish course for April. and that will be 2 days from the get-go. So you'll get double the amount of teaching for the same price. It's going to be on a Tuesday afternoon and a Thursday afternoon, actually in Eastern time context. So for me, it's mostly more going to be early evening. But yeah, so if you go to monospacementor.com and click the new events link up here, not only will you get a list of my live streams that are coming up, but if you go to the calendar view and go into April, you can see down here, April 23rd and 25th, there's going to be another round of the Varnish Mastery course, where I teach you all that you need to know to run the Varnish cache proxy and improve the performance of your website by orders of magnitude. Thanks for asking. So yeah, I had made the decision to launch a course in Q1 of 2024. I made that in December when I did my personal retreat. I was frustrated that I couldn't get the Linux mastery course off the ground, but that was simply because it was much too heavy. It was impossible to do on a short notice. So I decided, okay, I'm going to pick something that's smaller, that's less extensive in scope, and I'll make it into a course. And so I did. I scheduled it for the end of February, which might have been a little bit too ambitious, but I made it. It was a mad scramble, but I did manage to get it launched, and with quite a bunch of participants, we did it for the first time. We talked about the HTTP protocol in detail, how it influences caching, how caching then in turn influences website performance, how to strike a good balance between content delivery speed and content freshness, all these things, and of course how to install, set up, configure and maintain Varnish when it's in operation. Lots of interesting stuff. And I've poured everything into that course that I've learned in 13 years of operating Varnish on our managed hosting platform. We are running thousands of websites behind Varnish with millions of page views every month. And so yeah, I think it's rather every day, actually. So yeah, it was great to get back into teaching. Just the other day, I got my certificates out that I got when I became a SUSE Linux certified trainer, which was back in 2001. And going back to my teaching past and getting back into teaching was a goal that I had for this year. And yeah, I'm a very happy teacher now and looking forward to the upcoming courses that I'm going to launch this year. Another question with a lot of detail. Hey Jochen, thank you so much for spending your Friday helping us out. Yep, happy to do so. I'm a self-taught junior developer and currently working on my own SaaS project. Brilliant! I mean, there's nothing more terrifying on one hand to launch than launching your own business and based on the technology that you develop. On the other hand, I can't think of anything that's also not more can't think of anything that's more satisfying than doing that. So yeah, the risk to pleasure ratio is pretty even there. Golang based GPS tracker API, nice. I am pretty sure that I get into Go development this year. For development convenience, I Dockerized every part of the app. DB server, web server, API server. Yep. Something like Docker Compose, or if you'd like it more sophisticated, something like Portainer, or Dogg or no idea how to pronounce that. It's docge. Are great ways to get these things spun up. Down to certbot for creating SSL certificate, and even the cron jobs are Docker based. If you don't want to, for example, do certbot manually, using a proxy like Caddy, for example, is also quite a convenient approach to that. Or Traffic, for example, is another great alternative, and they will take care of provisioning SSL certificates automatically. Everything works perfectly, and there are no issues. Well, why are you asking then? Let's read on. However, now that I'm planning the live environment for the project, I keep wondering if running everything through Docker might be an issue. I can't really tell what exactly bugs me about the current setup, but there is a voice inside my head that keeps telling me that I shouldn't run everything out of Docker and have as much of the project run directly from the host. Could you give your thoughts in this, and maybe a high-level view on when you should run apps using Docker and when not to? Sorry for the long question. I hope this is not too off topic. It's not off topic at all. It can't be more on topic, actually. This is a great question, and thanks for making it this long, because having this much context will enable me to answer your question in a much more helpful and useful way than if you would just ask, should I use Docker for deployment? So you've done everything right. You've done a great job, and I'll do my best to give you an equally helpful answer, which is not going to be easy, to be honest, because yeah, that's a textbook question here. All right, so Docker or not. My instinctive reaction would come out of the feeling that in my own production infrastructure, we still haven't embraced Docker yet, and I wish we had. I slept a little bit on Docker when it came out, and I mean, even when I realized that Docker was a useful solution and B, here to stay, even with that realization, migrating a working business with hundreds of Linux servers off the way we are doing it currently to something completely new, like say a Docker-based deployment, is a huge undertaking anyway and can't be done on a weekend. So yeah, even though I'm not mad at myself for kind of missing the Docker train, I still wish we already had it. So that kind of work is still ahead of myself. That might make me a little bit biased to recommending staying the course. I don't think using Docker in your situation is anything you should be afraid of. There are many people doing the exactly same. And Docker is a great way to package an application. I mean, even my own stream setup here is kind of an extreme example for that, because I run OBS out of a Docker container. Martin of Wimpy's World fame here on Twitch has actually created a Docker image that contains OBS with a huge bunch of plugins, everything pre-compiled and pre-configured, and you can simply download the container image and run it using DistroBox, and that's exactly what I'm doing. Every time I update my NVIDIA drivers, I download a new version of the container image, and that's all I have to do to get a working OBS installation, and I don't have to worry about updating each and every plugin all the time. I simply pull a new image and recreate my DistroBox instance for OBS, and that's it. So Docker can be a great way to package even a huge application like that. And you've already separated stuff out. You have your own DB server, you have your API server, your web application, stuff like that. Certbot. I think you've done it by the book, and that will definitely benefit you. And the only thing you should consider is what you'll use to run your images in. Maybe that's where it's a good idea to put a little bit of thought into. Namely, will you use something like a managed Docker hosting platform, something like EKS on Amazon or something like that? Because that might prevent you from spending nights trying to get your Docker hosting back online, even though your own images are perfectly fine. Something in your deployment broke or in your Docker infrastructure broke. And maybe consider having some help in managing that stuff and paying for that. That would be something that I would recommend. But other than that, I can't see anything wrong with your current approach. That being said, listening to your gut is always a good idea. There were many times when I regretted decisions I made, and more often than not, I had to concede that I had ignored my gut feeling. My gut was telling me one thing and I did the other, and then I got to regret it. So if something tells you that there is some issue with your current setup or your current approach, make sure to investigate that and try to put a finger on it and find out why it feels so a little bit off. Maybe it's just because you're still unfamiliar and that's something that you can take care of. Maybe it's trusting that kind of technology enough to run it in production. But that also will go away over time once it had the chance of proving itself. So I think give it a go, give it a try and see where the snags are. I mean, if you're just starting out, that's also the best time to make these kinds of experiences, to learn stuff. You've not yet built that much of a brand, that much of a reputation, so there's not much that is at stake here. And if you communicate in a proper way, your users, your customers will actually be able to forgive you easily for some kind of teething problems if you are transparent about what you're doing, about what you've learned. So, yeah, TLDR, go for it. Others are things, it's pronounced Dockage. Creators cool with it, unlike Mr. Jiffy Giffy. Yeah, that's really strange. How? Oh no, I'm not going to get into that. Then Balthasar went on to say, most web apps, even SaaS apps, need less strength than you think they may need. Days of coding for web scale is a large misnomer this day. Yeah, definitely. Don't overthink things. Don't overcomplicate things. And yes, even if it doesn't make all the web scale people happy, doing the traditional vertical scaling approach, if you actually max out the machine that you're running your application on right now, simply get a bigger machine. I guess you'll definitely have a hard time maxing out the biggest machine you can get. And if it's not your application eating up resources willy-nilly, then there's a good chance that you have the revenue to that's causing if your customer growth is causing you to max out your resources. That's a great problem to have. That hopefully means that you have enough revenue and profit as well to actually scale things without having to go horizontal scaling, distributed computing, microservices and stuff. No, that's definitely not a problem at this stage. It's Me Brooks is the name behind the question. So, terrified launching it. Book recommendation, The War of Art. Not the other way around, not the old Japanese treatise, but that's a great read as well. But the War of Art deals with a central topic called resistance. And from that book, you learn that resistance oftentimes is what tells you what is the thing that you need to do right now, because that's where you feel the most resistance, where you feel the most anxiety and things like that. That points you in the direction in which you're supposed to go. And having a potential client who is awesome and willing to go slow and easy, you can really thank your lucky star for the situation you're in, because that's the perfect place to be starting from. Chugging Coffee says, ship it. See? What took me 5 minutes to explain, Chugging Coffee puts it in 2 words. Bethesda are also making a good point in terms of customer communication. They want to be informed. They don't necessarily have expectations of always online. That's my experience as well. Running a managed hosting platform, especially for high-performance websites, of course, also gets you customers that have high expectations and that might actually pay high prices for that. And still, sometimes we screw up. Sometimes our data center screws up. Sometimes simply technology puts us in a bind. Sometimes it's human error. And we had at least one incident where someone deleted stuff on the wrong machine, and still we haven't lost any significant customers over issues like that. Because if you are able to communicate what happened, and especially what you've learned from it, and how your service and your processes and stuff like that will be better in the future, giving them more value for money, objectively, that usually helps you retain your customers even when shit happens. And so don't only have a technology strategy, but also a customer communication strategy. How transparent do you want to be and things like that? Yeah, that's definitely something that will take you a long way. And what Balthazar says about databases is very true too. It's not impossible for databases to be managed in containers. Yeah. The issue that creeps up with the databases in particular is simply local storage. You need local storage for databases to be performant. You can't put database table spaces on some kind of a network storage because the latency is far too high. And if you store databases locally, that means your database is now bound to the specific host it's running on, and the container itself doesn't really give you a lot of advantages anymore over running it locally. And that would be an approach I would take at the beginning. It's actually an approach we are still taking with our high-profile customers, where we simply take bare metal servers, deploy MySQL on them, and run them in a replication setup. So the replication setup solves the local storage issue, and having it dedicated to these machines not only gives us huge performance, it also prevents things like noisy neighbor problems, where one container eats up the resources that are supposed to be used by another. So that is definitely something that you should explore. If you have database load, that would be the first thing I'd isolate, where I would put the database on a dedicated VPS, for example, or a dedicated EC2 instance or something like that. Or, as Balthasar says, getting a managed database from the start, something like RDS on Amazon. It's expensive, but database operations is also an area that is a skill in and out of itself. So it does make sense paying for that. The one place where I did consider using containers for databases is where we run a lot of small databases. We still have a low-end product that we offer. We'll probably stop offering that because it's just not part of our business model. But if you run lots of small databases, of course, you can't just dedicate a whole bare metal host to each and every one of them. That would be a waste of money. And so I did actually consider running databases in Docker containers, sharing a single physical host, and simply then exporting each database on its own separate port, so that we would have a database machine that has enough oomph to run, say, 10 MySQL instances in parallel, without them being shared, without them having shared storage or shared user databases or things like that. So each MySQL instance would be its own instance with its own configuration, with its own specific settings, but they would share a single host. And that's where I think containers could come in handy, to simply have some kind of this lightweight VM approach without having all the overhead of running actual VMs. But that's a completely different use case from what you've been describing, so that's just a side discussion here. And yes, DigitalOcean, of course, has their own managed database offers. There are lots of providers that will take care of that for you. SQLite has been in the headlines recently because it had been lurking in the shadows for a long time, being very capable, but no one really considered using it in production. Ruby on Rails, for example, comes with a SQLite default configuration, but everyone just considered that a development setup where you wouldn't run your own dedicated, say, Postgres. On the other hand, SQLite runs probably on each and every smartphone on the planet, taking care of contact management and all kinds of stuff, and doing a lot of heavy lifting. And SQLite can actually do a lot of stuff. It seemed to have some kind of a coming out in 2023 as a database that is definitely more than it seemed to be. Yep. SQLite is definitely worth a look. And since there's a replication, its own local storage issue isn't one anymore. I mean, yeah, advances in hardware also changed the scenery for SQLite. Running SQLite on an NVMe disk is definitely a different experience than running it on spinning Rust. But yeah, it's definitely not only just for development setups. Alright folks, if you still have questions, go ahead on qa.monospacementor.com and post them there, because I'm about to wrap things up. We've already gone beyond the 1 hour, which I don't mind. We usually go overtime with this office hour, but on the other hand, going into the weekend is very enticing as well. I feel a little bit tired and a little bit worn for wear, so I think that's a good point to wrap things up. And yes, I agree, Balthasar, that was a beautiful question. We'll have to make that a template for everyone else asking stuff. Let's do a little bit of final housekeeping. So if you want to ask questions outside of the office hour, where can you go? Well, you can go to our Discord and join us there. We are a friendly bunch of people, as you can see here on stream as well. And you can also leave your questions there, but you can also simply shoot the shit with us and have a laugh. So that's definitely something that you'll enjoy when you join our Discord. I'm also in the process of launching my own community platform that's going to go far beyond what we have on the Discord. That's going to launch either in March or early April. It's a paid membership, but you can find on the website why that is and the amount of value you'll get back in return. So that is definitely something that I would request you to consider. It's going to be great fun too. We'll have lots of events and stuff like that. We're going to do community projects where we build stuff together. We're going to go have member hot seats where you can actually ask questions like the one It's Me Brooks just asked. And so if that's something that you enjoyed, the server room, as our community is going to be called, is definitely something that's up your alley. Other than that, I'll be back next week. Let me take a look at my calendar if there's anything in the way of me doing my full schedule. No, there isn't. So I think we can slot in Tuesday and Thursday, 2 p.m. Irish time, 2 p.m. UTC, as live coding streams and another office hour. And on Friday, 2 p.m. UTC. And on Tuesday evening, we are also going to have our community hangout on Discord, where we share a video call and probably a few beverages and simply have a casual chat. So that's up for you next week. But first, have a great weekend, everyone. Let's see if there's anyone we can raid. Let me go back to Twitch.
It's a Unix system.
Cheers, Vault, slipping in right before we are wrapping things up. Let's see. Oh, look, we can pay it back. We are going to raid TBD Gamer and say hello to them. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for all the participation. It has been great fun, and I wish you all a great weekend. Till next time, take care.